Mom slipped something into my drink, assuming I didn't notice. "I made your favorite tea," she said gently, wearing a warm smile. I thanked her, then silently swapped cups with her stepdaughter, the same one who had mocked me earlier. Later, that evening, just an hour after. The story I'm about to tell started the day I felt like fate played its cruelest hand. I stood in the quiet rain, watching as my grandfather's casket was lowered into the ground. The drizzle had stopped just for the ceremony, but the air felt heavy, thick with moisture, a perfect match for the sorrow weighing down my spirit. My name is Maya Carter, and on that day, I said goodbye to the last person on earth who truly saw me and cherished me. My eyes drifted past the open grave to my mother, Patricia, delicately dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Beside her stood Robert, her husband of 8 years, and his kids from his first marriage, Amber and Tyler, both in college. They were all dressed in black, their faces set in appropriately somber expressions, but I wasn't fooled for a second. Not a single one of them had visited Grandpa James during the 3 months he was in the hospital. I was the one who stayed by his bedside, holding his hand as his battle with cancer slowly took its toll. "Maya," my mother called out once the service was over. "Thank you for handling all the arrangements. James would have liked that." Before I could even think of what to say, a man in a dark gray suit walked up. "Miss Carter, I'm Howard Benson, your grandfather's attorney. We need to discuss the reading of his will." My mother's attention sharpened instantly. "When will that happen?" she asked, barely hiding how eager she was. "Now, if that works for you," Howard replied, looking at me for confirmation. "That's fine," I confirmed. About 20 minutes later, we were all gathered in my grandfather's spacious living room. The air felt thick with anticipation as Howard settled at the dining room table, pulling documents from his briefcase. "Let us begin the formal reading of the final will and testament of James Edward Carter," he announced. As he read through the legal language, I watched my mother. She was leaning forward, her eyes glued to the papers. Amber, my stepsister, kept looking around the room like she was already figuring out what everything was worth. "To my beloved granddaughter, Maya Elizabeth Carter, I leave my entire estate," Howard stated, continuing, "including my main residence at 1400 Cedar Avenue, my vacation property at Lake Clearwater, and all monetary holdings, totaling approximately $800,000. The room went completely silent. I wasn't surprised. Grandpa had always been clear about what he wanted. But the reactions of the others were pretty telling. Amber's jaw dropped, and my mother's faint smile froze on her face. "Furthermore," Howard went on, "to Patricia Carter, I bequeath my sterling silver kitchen collection, which she always seemed to admire." My mother sat up straight, her eyes wide. "What? Just the silver set?" Howard confirmed, "That is correct." "The old fool," she muttered under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. Indignation flared inside me. "That set is worth thousands," I said coldly, "and he didn't owe you anything." Howard quickly finished reading, explaining the process for transferring the properties and funds. Amber was glaring at me, while Tyler pretended to be glued to his phone, faking disinterest, but clearly disappointed. After Howard left, my mother turned to me. "Maya, you should really think about sharing some of this inheritance. Your father would have wanted his family taken care of." "My father passed away 12 years ago," I replied calmly. "Grandpa James was my family, the only true family I've had since Dad died." Amber suddenly cut in, her voice sharp. "That's not fair. You don't deserve all this. What makes you so special anyway? You're not even that smart or pretty or talented. You've never really accomplished anything." I glanced at my mother, expecting her to step in. She just stayed silent, and her quietness said everything I needed to know. "Well, Amber," I said evenly, "since you are so smart, beautiful, and talented, I'm sure you'll have no problem making your own fortune. Now, I'd appreciate it if you would all leave my house." They left muttering under their breath, shooting me resentful looks. Once they were gone, I locked the door and leaned against it, letting myself finally cry. After a few minutes, I wiped my eyes and went into Grandpa's study to start going through his things. As I sat at his desk, memories flooded back. My father died when I was 13. Everything changed. Mom met Robert a year later, and her focus completely shifted to her new life. When they got married and Robert moved in with his kids, I became an afterthought. Amber, who was 2 years younger than me, would steal my stuff and deny it, mess up my school projects and blame their dog, and Tyler would make crude comments when no adults were around. And Mom? She was too busy trying to be the perfect wife and stepmother to notice her own daughter struggling. Grandpa James became my safe place. I would stay at his house whenever I could, weekends, school breaks, even weeknights if I had a lot of homework. Nobody at home ever seemed to mind. When I graduated high school, Grandpa paid for me to go to college out of state. Those 4 years were the happiest time of my life. After college, I moved back to my hometown but got my own apartment. I visited Grandpa several times a week, but I rarely saw Mom, usually just by chance at the grocery store or gas station. She even forgot my birthday last year. Now Grandpa was gone, and I was alone. But I had his house, and enough money to figure out my future. As I went through his papers, I made a silent promise to honor his legacy by using his generosity wisely. Weeks later, I moved out of my apartment and into Grandpa's house. One Saturday morning, while I was sorting through some old books, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother and Amber on the porch, their smiles tight and unnatural. I opened the door hesitantly. "Mom, Amber, what are you doing here?" "Maya, dear," my mother said, pulling me into a hug before I could react. "I came to pick up the silver set James left me. I thought it would be a nice chance to visit and see how you're doing." I stepped aside. "It's in the kitchen cabinet, right where it's always been." Mom headed towards the kitchen while Amber stayed in the living room, her eyes scanning every detail. "God, this place is so depressing," she commented, touching a bookshelf. "It's like a museum for old people. If this were my house, I'd get all new furniture, paint everything, maybe even knock down some walls." "It's not your house," I replied, calmly, "and I like it just the way it is." Amber rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You always had weird taste." I bit my tongue and walked towards the kitchen. Mom was carefully wrapping the silver pieces in newspaper. When she finished, we stood awkwardly by the front door. I expected them to leave, but Mom spoke up. "Maya, I've been thinking about our relationship. You don't really have any close family left now that James is gone." I almost laughed at her, sudden concern. "That's true," I said neutrally. "Why don't you come over for dinner next Saturday?" she suggested. "I'll make all your favorites, chicken parmesan, garlic mashed potatoes, and that chocolate cake you loved when you were a kid." I was about to say no, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe a tiny flicker of hope, stopped me. "Okay," I agreed. "What time?" 6, she said, smiling widely now. "Robert and Tyler will be there too. It'll be a real family dinner." After they left, I sat on the porch swing, thinking about what had just happened. Mom hadn't shown much interest in me in years, and now she wanted family dinners. The timing, right after I inherited all that money, felt incredibly suspicious. But maybe, just maybe, Grandpa's death had made her realize she needed to reconnect with her only daughter. The week went by quickly. On Saturday, I arrived at my old house precisely at 6, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. The house seemed smaller than I remembered. I paused before ringing the doorbell, memories rushing back. This was where I had grown up, where I had played with Dad, where I had felt loved, until I didn't anymore. Robert answered the door. "Maya," he said with his usual detached nod, never one for warmth. Inside, Mom was setting the table, using the silver service she had picked up. Tyler was on the sofa, absorbed in a video game, barely looking up as I walked in. "Maya, you're right on time," Mom called out. "Dinner's almost ready." "Can I help with anything?" I offered. "No need, I've got it all handled. Just make yourself at home." The irony stung. This used to be my home, and now I felt like a guest. I wandered through the living room, noticing how the family photos were now mostly pictures of Robert's kids. I walked upstairs, my hand tracing the banister where Dad had marked my height year after year. Looking for something? Amber's voice came from behind me. Just remembering things, I said. She followed me up the stairs. I turned to face her. Your old bedroom is my dressing room now, she said, a smug look on her face. You don't need it anymore, right? I didn't answer. My old room was completely different. Pink walls, clothing racks, a vanity table where my desk had once been. I walked back downstairs, intending to offer help in the kitchen again. As I got closer, I heard the clinking of glasses. Peering around the corner, I saw Mom at the counter, pouring a small amount of liquid from a little bottle into a mug. She quickly hid the bottle when she heard the floorboards creak. Maya, she said, spinning around abruptly. I was just making your tea. You still like it with honey, right? Right, I replied, my mind racing. What had she just put in that mug? I joined the others in the dining room. Mom brought a tray of drinks over, handing me the doctored mug. Your favorite tea, she said, her smile looking strained. I smiled back, noticing that Amber had an identical mug right next to hers. While Mom was distracted for a moment, I quickly swapped our mugs. Everything looks delicious, I commented, taking a slow sip from Amber's mug. I watched Mom watching me, her eyes darting nervously towards the mug in my hand. So, Maya, Robert said, breaking the silence. What are your plans for that big house? Seems like a lot for just one person. I'm not entirely sure yet, I replied. I'm still getting settled in. The conversation continued, but I was distracted, watching Mom's unease grow with every minute. I lingered after dinner, ignoring her subtle hints that it was getting late. About an hour later, Amber stopped in the middle of a sentence, her face paling. I don't feel well, she murmured, clutching her forehead. Amber? Robert stood up quickly as she slumped forward, fainting right there at the table. Panic erupted. What's happening? Mom shrieked, gently shaking Amber. Robert checked her pulse. Patricia, call an ambulance now. As Mom fumbled with her phone, I spoke up. I should probably mention I accidentally swapped mugs with Amber. Earlier. They looked identical, and I wasn't really paying attention. Maybe she drank something that didn't agree with her. Mom's eyes darted to Amber's empty mug, then to mine. No, that's not. Robert, call 911 right now. Her panic confirmed all my suspicions. Mom, I said softly, what did you put in my tea? Nothing, don't be ridiculous. Then why are you so scared? What's happening to Amber? Shut up, she screamed, her composure completely falling apart. I calmly dialed the police. I'd like to report an attempted poisoning. I believe my mother tried to drug me, but my stepsister accidentally drank it instead. Paramedics arrived quickly, working to stabilize Amber. I told them what I had seen, my mother tampering with my tea. Her blood pressure is critically low, a paramedic told Robert. We need to transport her to the hospital right away. As they wheeled her out, police arrived. I repeated my account to the officers. The senior officer, a woman with a kind but serious face, questioned Mom. Mom completely broke down. It was clonidine, she confessed between sobs. I took it from Mrs. Winters when I was cleaning her house. She uses it for high blood pressure. I thought it would make Maya dizzy, disoriented while she was driving home. Maybe she'd crash. She'd need us to help her recover. And she'd have to share the money. The room went silent. Patricia Carter, the officer stated, her voice firm. You are under arrest for attempted murder. Murder? Mom gasped. But I didn't mean to kill her, just hurt her a little. Drugging someone with medication that could cause a traffic accident shows intent to cause serious harm or death, the officer explained, putting handcuffs on her. As they escorted Mom away, she looked back at me and mouthed something that looked like, I'm sorry. I turned away, unable to watch her go. Robert walked over, looking completely shaken. I had no idea, Maya. I swear I didn't. I believed him. He was self-centered, but not evil. Go to the hospital, I said. Amber needs you. He nodded, leaving with Tyler. I finished giving my statement to the police. "You'll need to come to the station tomorrow to sign everything," the officer told me, "and you may be called to testify in court." Exhausted, I agreed and drove home. As I pulled into Grandpa's driveway, the reality of it all hit me. My mother had tried to hurt me, possibly kill me, for money. The mother who had once read me bedtime stories had become a stranger. I sat in my car and wept, not from sadness, but from a deep sense of anger and betrayal. Eventually, I went inside. The house felt quiet and empty, filled with all of Grandpa's things. "I miss you, Grandpa," I whispered. "What am I supposed to do now?" The weeks that followed were a blur of police interviews, lawyer meetings, and court appearances. Mom was formally charged with attempted murder. The evidence, her confession, the clonidine found at the house, Amber's hospital records, was overwhelming. Her attorney argued that she hadn't intended to kill me, but the prosecutor countered that drugging someone with the potential for a deadly car crash showed a reckless disregard for human life. Mom eventually accepted a plea bargain, 5 years, in state prison for attempted second-degree murder, with the possibility of parole after 3. As they led her away at the sentencing, she looked at me and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Outside the courthouse, Robert came over. He told me Amber was recovering well and wanted to talk to me. "She's horrified by Patricia's actions. We all are." I agreed to visit Amber. At their house, Amber looked pale, but was alert. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I need to apologize to you, not just for Mom, but for how I've treated you over the years." She admitted she had always felt jealous of my connection with my dad and Grandpa. "Nobody ever really put me first," she said. "It wasn't perfect," I said, "but it was real." We talked for about an hour, not about Mom or the inheritance, but about our lives and how we got here. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. We agreed to meet for coffee soon, a small step forward. 3 months later, I got a letter from Mom in prison. She wrote about feeling remorse, about how she had lost herself after Dad's death and had pushed me away because she couldn't deal with her own pain. "I'm not asking you to visit or to write back," she wrote. "I just want you to know that I truly am sorry." I put the letter in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond yet. Over the next 2 years, I slowly built my life. I kept Grandpa's house, blending his classic style with my own. I used the inheritance to go back to school and get my master's degree. In education, made new friends, and even started dating occasionally. Amber and I became cordial, sometimes even genuinely friendly. Tyler moved away, and Robert and I exchanged holiday cards sometimes. Mom wrote periodically, sharing updates about her therapy and life in prison. I read her letters but never replied. Her latest one mentioned she was coming up for parole soon, but she didn't ask to stay with me. She seemed to understand that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Yesterday, I found an old photo album in the attic, pictures of Dad and me laughing at the beach, opening presents, riding bikes. On the very last page, Grandpa had written, "For Maya, never forget how much joy you brought to your father's life. He lives on in you." I sat there and wept, holding the album, crying, for all that I had lost and all that I had gained. Dad and Grandpa were gone, and Mom was lost to me in her own way, but their love felt like it was still there, sustaining me. Today, I'm sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset behind the trees. The old oak tree Dad planted when I was born still towers over the house, its roots deeply embedded in the soil. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive Mom, or if she will ever truly understand the depth of her betrayal. But I am at peace, knowing I experienced a love that was unconditional, a gift that no one can ever take away from me, not even the mother, who tried to harm me for an inheritance I would have willingly shared if she had just asked.